Have you ever walked away from a conversation just absolutely certain that you were right? I mean, you had the receipts.
Oh, yeah.
You remembered exactly what was said. You knew the timeline.
Right.
You could practically see the text messages just floating in the air in front of you.
Right, you've got the whole mental filing cabinet open.
Exactly. You went into that interaction knowing, without a shadow of a doubt, that your perspective was the correct one. And yet somehow, 20 minutes later, you ended up apologizing.
Which is just, it leaves you with this profoundly disorienting physical sensation.
Oh, it really does.
Your heart rate is up, there's a pit in your stomach, and, well, the ground just feels like it's shifted underneath you.
That is the exact feeling. You walk away and the internal monologue just immediately turns against you. You start thinking, maybe I'm overreacting, or maybe my memory really is that bad.
Or the absolute worst one.
Maybe I am the problem here.
Right. You walked into that room looking for an apology, and you walked out giving one.
It's completely baffling when it happens. It is. And if that highly specific, highly uncomfortable scenario sounds familiar to you, I want to tell you right away, it is not because you are weak-willed, and it is certainly not because you are losing your grip on reality.
No, not at all. It happens because you're engaging with someone who possesses a really highly developed, terrifyingly effective skill set for dismantling your self-trust.
Wow.
Yeah, the human brain is built to seek harmony and resolve conflict. Right. And certain individuals, they know exactly how to exploit that biological hardware to just bend your reality to their will.
And that brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are exploring a really fascinating source document that breaks down exactly how manipulators make you doubt yourself.
It's an incredible breakdown.
It is. But our goal isn't just to, list bad behaviors. We want to uncover the hidden mechanics, the psychological and almost neurological sleight of hand behind these interactions.
Right, because it really is a progression.
Yeah, we're going to track how someone moves from planting a tiny seed of doubt all the way into orchestrating these incredibly complex behavioral loops that just trap you in a state of constant confusion.
Reclaiming your own cognitive real estate is the ultimate goal here. I mean, if we can expose the underlying architecture of how this works, well, the tactics lose their power entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the promise today is that by the end of this deep dive, you are going to be able to recognize these specific mind games in real time.
You'll see them coming a mile away.
You're going to see the code behind the matrix, and most importantly, you're going to learn how to start trusting your own mind again.
To do that effectively, though, we have to start by completely redefining what manipulation actually looks like.
Right.
Because there is a deeply ingrained misconception in our culture. When we hear the word manipulation or abuse, the brain immediately conjures up a very cinematic villain.
Yeah, like the Hollywood version of toxicity.
Exactly. We picture shouting, overt threats, slam doors, a very clear, very aggressive dynamic.
The problem is, if we're constantly scanning the horizon for a monster who yells and throws things, we leave the back door wide open for the real danger.
We do.
Because the most effective manipulators, they rarely start with aggression, do they?
No, because aggression is loud. It triggers your amygdala, your brain's threat detection system.
Right, the alarm bells.
Exactly. If someone starts screaming at you, your biological alarm bells ring, your fight or flight response kicks in, and you put up immediate resistance.
You physically lean back.
Right. A skilled manipulator wants to bypass the amygdala entirely. So they don't use aggression. They use a much quieter, far more insidious tool. They use doubt.
I was thinking about this mechanism, and it strikes me as being basically identical to how a highly sophisticated computer hacker operates.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right, because a good hacker doesn't do a smash and grab to steal your physical hard drive. That's messy. It triggers the alarms, the security guards come running.
It's too obvious.
Instead, they find a tiny vulnerability in the code. They just slip into the network, quietly gain root access, and they just subtly change your passwords.
And then they just sit back.
Right. They sit back and watch as you eventually lock yourself out of your own system. You are the one hitting the keys, but you get an access denied message on your own memories and feelings.
That is such a precise analogy.
They haven't stolen anything physical, right? They've just compromised your administrative access to your own reality.
It captures the mechanism perfectly because it highlights the transfer of control. I mean, a manipulator doesn't need to control your physical life.
They don't have to lock you in a room.
No. They don't need to dictate where you go or micromanage your bank account. Because if they can control the permissions on what you believe about yourself, well, they inherently control everything else.
So if doubt is the weapon, if that's the malicious code the hacker is injecting, where is the very first place they aim it? Like, what's the entry point into the system?
The entry point is almost always your memory. They aim directly at your recollection of events.
Why memory specifically?
Because memory is the foundation of identity and reality. If you can't trust what happened yesterday, you can't trust your judgment today.
Which brings us to the deliberate act of making you question your own reality, which is commonly referred to as gaslighting.
Right, a term we hear a lot now.
Yeah, it's the deployment of lines like that never happened, or you're imagining things, or the classic, you always twist my words.
To understand why this is so devastating, we really have to look at how memory actually works. Human memory isn't a video recording that you just play back on a screen.
It's not a hard drive.
It's not.
Yeah.
Every single time you recall a memory, your brain is actively reconstructing it in real time. It's a highly vulnerable process.
Wow, so it's fluid.
Very fluid. If someone confidently injects false information during that reconstruction phase, they can actually corrupt the save file.
Let's make this concrete with a scenario for the listener. Imagine you clearly remember them promising to attend an important event with you. It's not a vague, hazy recollection. You specifically remember the conversation. You even told your friends about it.
Right. You have external markers of the memory.
Exactly. But the day arrives, and they just don't show up. And when you bring it up later, they don't offer an apology. They don't make up an excuse about traffic or being busy.
Which would be the normal bad behavior.
Right. Instead, they just calmly stare at you and state, I never agreed to that. You must have misunderstood.
The operative word there is calmly. This is what psychologists refer to as the gaslighter's sweet spot. Notice what they are not doing here.
You mean?
Well, they aren't bringing out a calendar. They aren't producing text messages. They aren't actually trying to definitively prove you wrong with evidence.
Because they can't. The facts aren't on their side.
Exactly. Their goal is simply to project an aura of absolute, unshakable confidence. Human beings are deeply social creatures, We use mirror neurons to assess the reality of those around us.
So we look to others to confirm what's real.
Yes. When someone delivers a lie with zero hesitation and total certainty, it creates immediate cognitive friction in your brain. You think to yourself, I am so sure they said yes, but how can they be this confident if they're wrong?
Is it possible my memory is the one that's glitching?
And the moment you ask yourself that question,
It's been injected.
you've opened the door.
But I want to pause and genuinely push back here for a second. Because memory is fallible. We just established that it's not a video recording.
It is fallible, absolutely.
So how does a listener distinguish between a manipulator maliciously rewriting reality and just two people genuinely misremembering a messy, complicated conversation?
I mean, I've definitely sworn I told someone something and realized days later I just thought about telling them.
That is a vital distinction to make. The difference isn't found in a single, isolated incident. I mean, we all misremember things.
Right.
In a healthy dynamic, misremembering is a two-way street. Both people occasionally say, oh, my bad, I completely forgot, or wow, I have no memory of that, I'm so sorry.
There's mutual accountability. Exactly. The hallmark of manipulation, however, is a consistent one-directional erosion of your reality. It is a pattern where your memory is perpetually the flawed one and their memory is perpetually the gold standard.
It's the asymmetry of it.
Yes. When it happens over and over, the cumulative effect actually alters your brain's baseline. You experience a kind of cognitive exhaustion.
Because you're constantly on trial.
Fighting for your reality every single day takes an immense amount of energy. So eventually, the brain seeks the path of least resistance. You surrender. You begin outsourcing your memory to them, defaulting to their version of events just to keep the peace.
But let's say you're stubborn. What happens if you hold the line? You say, no, I know what you said. I wrote it down. I refuse to budge.
Well, a skilled manipulator doesn't just fold and admit defeat there.
Right, they pivot. The source material shows that if the attack on your memory fails, they immediately shift the crosshairs from your memory to your feelings.
This is the transition into emotional invalidation. And it is a masterful, almost invisible misdirection.
It's so insidious because instead of engaging with the actual events that occurred, the broken promise, the mean comment, they attack you for feeling anything at all about it.
Yes, you get hit with those classic lines.
But you're overreacting, you're too sensitive, or you're always so dramatic.
The manipulator has effectively changed the subject without you even realizing a subject change occurred.
Let's use another real-world scenario from the text. You go to your partner, or maybe a coworker, and you express that a joke they made about you in front of a group was really demeaning and hurtful.
You're trying to address a very specific behavior.
Right. And they reply, wow, you're really going to make a big deal out of a joke. You're so sensitive, it's honestly exhausting to be around you.
Look at the sheer mechanics of that pivot. The spotlight was glaring brightly on their behavior, the mean joke. In one sentence, they have grabbed that spotlight and swung it completely around to focus on your reaction.
Your supposed sensitivity.
Exactly.
You walk in wanting to discuss what they did, and suddenly you are literally on trial for who you are.
You are forced to stop asking the entirely reasonable question, did this person do something wrong? Instead, you begin asking an internalized, deeply damaging question.
What is wrong with me?
Right. What is fundamentally wrong with me that I feel this way? You are immediately put on the defensive, having to justify your own emotional existence.
Spending time thinking about the long-term damage of this, it's incredibly heavy. The source outlines this concept of pre-editing your emotions that happens as a result. And if we really sit with that for a second, it sounds like a deeply miserable, exhausting way to live.
It is an immense cognitive load to carry.
It really is. You start living in this constant state of self-censorship. You feel a pang of hurt or anger or frustration. But before you even open your mouth to express it, your brain runs a full simulation of the argument.
You play out the whole fight in your head.
Yeah. You think, if I bring up that I'm hurt, they aren't going to apologize. They're just going to call me dramatic. It's going to turn into a 4-hour fight about my reaction, not their action. So you just swallow it. You stay quiet.
What you're describing is a form of Pavlovian conditioning. They are actively training your nervous system to associate your own self-expression with pain and conflict.
That's terrifying.
Every single time you pre-edit an emotion, every time you bite your tongue to avoid being called crazy, you are physically reinforcing the neural pathway that says your feelings are invalid and untrustworthy. You are essentially doing the manipulator's work for them.
But this brings up a massive question. I mean, if someone was doing this to you constantly, if they were always telling you that your memory is a garbage and your feelings are wrong and annoying human survival instinct says run,
Of course.
you would eventually just hate them. You would pack your bags or quit the job and leave. So what overrides that survival instinct? How do they essentially drug the brain into staying?
That is the crux of the entire dynamic. And it's explained by the nice-mean cycle, or what behavioral psychologists call intermittent reinforcement.
Okay, break that down for us.
The reality is, manipulators are rarely monsters, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If they were, as you said, you would leave. The threat would be obvious.
Right, there would be no confusion.
Instead, they manufacture a profound dependency by mixing cruelty with intense kindness in highly unpredictable ways.
It's the stark contrast that creates the hook. The text outlines this clearly. On Monday, they might shout at you, call you names, tell you you're completely useless, you feel devastated, you're ready to walk away.
You're at your breaking point.
But then on Tuesday, they come home with your favorite food, they cuddle up to you, look deeply into your eyes and say, I am so sorry about yesterday. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only good thing in my life.
If we look at the neurochemistry of this, it is identical to the psychology of a slot machine. B.F. Skinner proved this decades ago with his rat experiments.
Oh, the operant conditioning stuff?
Yes. If a rat presses a lever and gets a food pellet every single time, it actually gets bored. If it presses the lever and never gets a pellet, it stops trying completely.
It just gives up.
But if it presses the lever and gets a pellet at completely random, unpredictable intervals, the rat will press that lever until it collapses from exhaustion.
Because the unpredictability spikes the dopamine.
Spikes it massively. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's about anticipation. This intermittent reinforcement is arguably the most addictive and destructive behavioral loop a human brain can experience.
Because you never know what you're going to get.
Exactly. It keeps your nervous system totally dysregulated.
Yeah.
You are constantly hypervigilant, constantly scanning their face, their tone, their text messages for clues about which version of them you're going to get today.
And the really tragic part is the twisted logic the victim's brain is forced to adopt to survive this cognitive dissonance.
It's a survival mechanism.
Right. A healthy outside observer looks at that Monday-Tuesday dynamic and concludes, this person is dangerously unstable, run. But when you are inside the loop, the prefrontal cortex is trying to resolve the immense friction of holding two contradictory truths.
This person loves me, and this person is destroying me.
The brain cannot tolerate that level of dissonance for long. It has to resolve the equation.
And the way it resolves it is by clinging to Tuesday. You desperately want the loving, affectionate version of them to be the real them.
So to protect the idea of Tuesday, you have to explain away Monday.
You start actively making excuses for the abuser.
You tell yourself, well, work has been really stressful for them lately. Or, looping right back to the previous tactics we discussed, maybe I did overreact yesterday. I pushed their buttons. I know how they get when I bring up money.
The manipulator's wild inconsistency basically forces you to take the blame for their abuse just to make the world make sense.
It's wild. It's so much easier for the human ego to accept the premise, I am flawed and I need to try harder, than to accept the terrifying reality. The person I love and depend on is intentionally hurting me and I am unsafe.
That is a profoundly painful truth to accept.
It's a survival mechanism that slowly eats your self-esteem from the inside out. And once they have you in that loop, once you're doing the heavy lifting of excusing their bad behavior and taking the blame for their outbursts, we move into the next phase.
They have to ensure you don't build up enough confidence to realize you deserve better.
Which brings us to tactic 4, the deliberate sabotage of your competence, often disguised as realism or tough love.
Because if you feel confident, smart, and capable, the illusion breaks. You might realize you can survive without them.
So they actively undermine your intelligence and agency. They belittle your ideas and frame you as inherently clueless. You'll hear these cutting, infantilizing phrases.
You wouldn't understand, the logistics are too complex.
Or, you're terrible with big decisions, just let me handle it.
It's a steady, deliberate erosion of your self-efficacy. Over time, that messaging evolves from, let me help you, into something much darker.
Right.
It turns into, no one else would ever put up with you, or you're lucky you have me to navigate the real world for you.
Think about a career move, for example, from the text. You spend weeks researching and planning a really exciting pivot in your career. You've crunched the numbers, you've updated your resume, you are feeling genuinely empowered.
Just stepping into your own power.
Yes. You bring it to them, excited to share your ambition, and they just roll their eyes, let out a heavy sigh, and say, you'll never stick with that. You always quit halfway when things get hard. Just be realistic for once and save yourself the embarrassment.
Notice the framing there. It's not framed as a malicious insult. It is framed as an act of service.
Right, they're doing you a favor.
They're doing you a favor by injecting a dose of reality into your naive dreams.
I do want to play devil's advocate here for a moment, though, because this line feels blurry to me. What if the person really does have a history of quitting things halfway? Shouldn't a partner or a good friend be honest? Where is the line between giving genuine tough love and engaging in manipulative sabotage?
That is a critical distinction to make, and it really comes down to the fundamental intent and the target of the feedback.
Okay, explain that.
Honest feedback is constructive, and its ultimate goal is your success. It targets the problem. A healthy partner might say, I'm so excited for you, but I'm worried about the financial risk here given our current budget. Let's look at the numbers together so we can make this work.
So they attack the logistics, not the person?
Precisely. Sabotage, on the other hand, targets your character. It is designed to make you question whether you are fundamentally capable of achieving anything at all.
It doesn't offer solutions.
No, it only offers deflation. The goal of sabotage is to keep you small, dependent, and entirely reliant on their supposedly superior judgment.
That clears it up perfectly. Honest feedback builds a bridge over the obstacle. Sabotage tells you that you're too weak to walk.
That's a great way to put it.
So, if we recap the psychological state of the listener at this point in the progression, they've successfully ruined your confidence in your memory. They've made you believe your emotions are an annoying burden. They have you addicted to an unpredictable cycle of highs and lows. And they've convinced you that you are fundamentally incompetent.
It is a systemic dismantling of a person's core identity.
But surely, even in this state, the manipulator will eventually do something so overtly wrong, so undeniably bad, that it cannot be spun. They get caught in a lie, or they do something incredibly hurtful in public. What happens then when the facts are dead to rights?
That is when they deploy a tactic often referred to as moral judo. It's the art of burying you in blame and guilt, literally no matter the circumstances.
I love the term moral judo because physical judo is all about using your opponent's momentum and weight against them. In a psychological context, it means that no matter what the original offense was, the argument is going to flip in midair.
It always flips.
The story will always end with, this is your fault.
In psychological circles, the mechanics of this are often described using the acronym DARVO.
DARVO, right?
Yes, deny, attack, and reverse, victim and offender. The manipulator denies the behavior, attacks you for bringing it up, and magically the roles reverse. You become the aggressor and they become the victim.
I really struggle with this one in practice. The source gives an example where you are at a party and you watch your partner blatantly flirt with someone else right in front of you.
A very clear violation.
Right. You bring it up on the car ride home. You say, "It really hurt me when you were flirting with that person." It's a clear statement of hurt based on an undeniable action. And they immediately reply, "Well, if you weren't so insecure and distant all the time, I wouldn't have to get attention from elsewhere. You're the one pushing me away."
The cognitive gymnastics there are just breathtaking in their audacity.
But here's my genuine confusion. In the heat of that argument, in the confines of a car, how do I know if I'm actually just being insecure? If I already doubt my memory and my feelings, that accusation feels incredibly potent. How do you untangle that moral judo in real time?
You untangle it by looking at the sequencing of accountability.
The sequencing?
Yes. A healthy individual, even if they genuinely believe you are feeling insecure, will address the primary hurt first. They would say, "I'm so sorry I made you feel that way. That wasn't my intention."
Right. They take ownership of their action first.
Exactly. Only after accountability is taken might a healthy couple discuss underlying insecurities. The manipulator, though, uses the accusation of insecurity purely as a shield to deflect accountability entirely.
So they skip step one.
They skip it completely. The active, hurtful choice that they made is instantly transformed into undeniable evidence of your personal flaws.
It's a terrifying flip. Suddenly, you are the one apologizing for being distant, while they get off completely scot-free for their inappropriate behavior.
And this erosion of the moral compass is devastating. Over time, you lose track of who is the victim and who is the aggressor. You start to believe that every bad thing they do is actually just a symptom of your own inadequacy.
And naturally, a normal human reaction to this level of profound distress is to seek outside help. The pressure builds up and you desperately want to talk to a friend, a family member, or therapist just to say, "Hey, am I losing my mind or is this behavior messed up?"
Which brings us to a critical juncture. If a victim gets outside perspective, the manipulator's entire house of cards collapses.
Because the spell relies on isolation.
Exactly. A healthy third party will spot the absurdity of the moral judo immediately.
And that is exactly what the manipulator must prevent at all costs. This leads to tactic 6, the quarantine, cutting you off from reality checks.
To keep the doubt strong, the manipulator has to monopolize your reality. They have to actively limit your access to any other perspectives.
The way they execute this is so methodical. They start trashing your support system. They label your best friend as toxic or jealous of our relationship.
They insist that your parents are just trying to control you.
Yeah, they plant this romanticized but highly dangerous idea that it's just you and me against the world and nobody else understands our special connection.
We have to look at the evolutionary biology here to understand why this is so effective. Humans survived in tribes. Being cast out of the tribe meant certain death.
It's primal.
It is. Our brains process social ostracization and isolation using the exact same neural pathways that process physical pain. Isolation feels like a physical threat. So the manipulator triggers that primal fear of isolation from your friends and family while simultaneously presenting themselves as your only safe harbor.
I think about this like being a juror in a very bizarre courtroom. Imagine you were sitting in the jury box. The defense attorney, the manipulator, has somehow managed to lock the opposing counsel and the judge completely out of the building.
You're completely captive.
You are only hearing one side of the argument day after day, week after week.
There is no judge to rule on hearsay or object to corrupted evidence.
Exactly. With no one there to provide a reality check, the defense attorney's version of events inevitably becomes the only version of reality available to the jury.
That's incredibly dangerous.
Imagine you tell the manipulator, "I'm feeling really confused about things lately. I think I'm going to talk to a therapist." They snap back aggressively. "Oh, so now you're going to go turn some stranger against me. You just love playing the victim. Go ahead, go tell him a bunch of lies about our private life."
Yeah, and just like that, they've turned the healthy act of seeking help into an act of profound betrayal.
You're trapped.
If you speak up to others, you endure the immense guilt of betraying the relationship. But if you stay silent, you are left in the quarantine with only their voice echoing in your head, constantly reinforcing your flaws.
And once you are fully quarantined in that echo chamber, you enter the final and undoubtedly the most dangerous phase of the manipulation. Tactic 7, the normalization of the confusion.
This is where the bizarre becomes the permanent baseline.
The final trick is making all of this psychological chaos feel perfectly, wonderfully normal. The crying, the doubting, the endless apologizing for things you didn't do. They use sweeping, dismissive phrases to reframe it as standard operating procedure.
All couples fight like this. You just don't know how real relationships work.
Or you're just creating drama, this is just life.
It's the psychological equivalent of the frog in boiling water. Because the temperature was turned up 1 degree at a time, starting with a single doubted memory, moving to an invalidated feeling, then to an unpredictable cycle, your baseline for what constitutes normal has been entirely recalibrated.
So what does this all mean? Let's synthesize the emotional toll this takes on the listener who might be experiencing this right now. When you feel constantly confused, when you carry a heavy block of guilt in your stomach every single day, when you are perpetually on edge, endlessly rehearsing what you're going to say before you walk into a room just to avoid a blow-up, you don't step back and think, aha, I am experiencing the 7 stages of psychological manipulation.
No, your brain doesn't have the capacity to analyze it objectively from the inside.
It doesn't. Instead, you look in the mirror and you think, I'm just messed up, I'm broken, I'm inherently difficult to love. The doubt has been so successfully implanted that it has actually become who you think you are.
It's not a tactic happening to you anymore.
It is you.
It is the ultimate tragic victory for the manipulator. They have seamlessly integrated their critical voice into your own internal monologue.
It is incredibly heavy stuff. But I want to pause our analysis of the problem right here. We spent a lot of time in the dark, but we promised a way out. We know their playbook now. We've seen the underlying code of all 7 tactics. How do you, the listener, fight back? How do you break the spell and reclaim your mind?
Breaking the spell begins with establishing one cardinal and shakable rule of recovery. You cannot control a manipulator.
You can't argue them into seeing reason.
You cannot. You cannot love them into being healthy, you cannot out-debate them, and you cannot provide enough evidence to make them suddenly take accountability. But you can completely change your own response to their tactics.
You change your side of the dynamic.
Exactly. You change the choreography of the dance, and by doing so, you short-circuit the entire loop.
Let's walk through the 5 actionable steps from the source to actually do this, because they are incredibly powerful. Step 1 is almost deceptively simple. Name the tactic.
Name it out loud or firmly in your own mind. When they say, I never said that, you identify it. This is gaslighting.
When they say, you're too sensitive, you label it. This is emotional invalidation.
Precisely.
I call this the Rumpelstiltskin effect. In the fairy tale, the monster holds all the power until you speak its true name, and then it shatters. By applying a clinical label to their behavior, you instantly create psychological distance.
There's actual neuroscience backing that up, referred to as affect labeling. Research by Matthew Lieberman shows that putting feelings or experiences into concrete words significantly reduces the activation of the amygdala.
It cools the brain down.
It does.
Yeah.
It moves your brain out of the emotional panic center and into the prefrontal cortex, the logical analytical center. It stops being a confusing emotional whirlwind and becomes a predictable, pathetic tactic. You realize, oh, they're just running play number 4.
Which leads perfectly into step 2. Write things down. We discussed earlier how manipulators target your memory because memory is fluid. To combat this, you have to create an external hard drive for your reality.
Keep a journal. Use the Notes app on your phone, whatever is secure. After a significant conversation or conflict, write down exactly what was said, the sequence of events, and how you felt.
Just the facts.
Yes, do not editorialize. Don't try to analyze their motives, just record the raw data.
Because a week later, when they look you dead in the eye and say with that chilling absolute confidence that never happened, you don't have to rely on your gaslit, exhausted brain to fight back. You have a written, time-stamped reality to lean on.
And you don't even have to show it to them.
Right. Because showing it to them will just trigger moral judo. You have it for yourself. It anchors you.
And that physical evidence is the key to step 3, which is about breaking that evolutionary quarantine we talked about.
Yeah.
Reality check with safe people.
This is terrifying when you've been isolated and convinced that talking to others is a betrayal. But it's vital. You have to find a trusted friend, a mentor, or a therapist, and you have to present the data exactly as it happened.
You don't try to protect the manipulator.
No, you don't soften the blow or take the blame. You present the raw facts and you ask, does this sound reasonable? Am I crazy for being upset by this?
The relief that victims experience during this step is profound, Because almost invariably, that safe third party, who isn't blinded by intermittent reinforcement or cognitive dissonance, looks at them in horror and says, no, that is completely unacceptable behavior. You are not crazy.
In that moment, you realize that the massive, crushing burden of doubt you've been carrying around, it doesn't actually belong to you. You're just carrying their bags.
Now, step 4 requires a real paradigm shift in how you experience your own internal world. Treat self-doubt as a signal, not as proof.
This is the biggest aha moment of the whole breakdown for me. Let me reframe this for the listener. Right now, because of the conditioning, when you feel that wave of self-doubt wash over you during an argument, your trained response is to think, I'm doubting myself. So that means I must be wrong. I must be at fault.
You view doubt as a confession of guilt.
Exactly. But you have to train yourself to flip that script completely. When that familiar, heavy confusion hits you, you don't surrender to it. You stop and say, wait, I am feeling immense self-doubt right now, which means my internal intuition is actively fighting a false narrative being pushed on me.
Which of the tactics did they just use to trigger this?
It's brilliant. You turn the symptom of their abuse into an early warning radar system. You use their own weapon against them. I feel confused, therefore I am being manipulated.
And finally, step 5. Give your feelings a hearing. This is the direct antidote to the emotional invalidation tactic.
Before you immediately dismiss your own anger or sadness as overreacting, before you spend the mental energy pre-editing yourself out of existence, you have to let your emotions sit in the room with you.
They deserve to exist without immediate self-attack?
Even if you decide later, with the cool, analytical head, not to act on those feelings, you have to stop telling yourself you're fundamentally broken for feeling them in the first place. You are allowed to be hurt. You are allowed to be angry when you are disrespected.
If we pull back and synthesize the entirety of this deep dive, the overarching message here is one of profound empowerment.
It really is.
We've seen exactly how the code is written. Manipulators don't need physical chains. If they can quietly control your memory, exhaust your emotions, and dictate your judgment, they have won the war without firing a single visible shot.
But the beautiful, redeeming truth is that the power of these tactics relies entirely on their invisibility. They only work in the dark. The moment you turn the lights on, recognize the pattern, and name the tactic, the spell breaks.
When you see it for what it is, it just looks like a series of sad, predictable little tricks.
And it is worth stating clearly, unequivocally, to anyone listening who recognizes themselves in this dynamic, you are not too sensitive simply because you have the basic self-respect to notice when you are being demeaned.
You are not crazy for having an accurate, functional memory of the reality you lived through.
And you're not fundamentally the problem just because someone who completely refuses to take accountability keeps telling you that you are.
It's about drawing the line in the sand.
It is. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over today as you navigate your week. Think back to our opening scenario. Having the receipts, knowing you were right, but still folding and apologizing. If self-doubt is the ultimate master key tool that manipulators use to break you down, what happens if you start fiercely, stubbornly defending your right to trust your own first instinct? What happens if you back your own play, even if that instinct might occasionally genuinely be wrong? What if the simple, unyielding act of choosing to believe in the validity of your own mind is, in itself, the ultimate act of rebellion against manipulation?
Reclaiming your mind is the most powerful act of defiance there is.
We want to thank you for going on this deep dive with us today. It was heavy, complex material, but incredibly necessary. Keep questioning the narrative you're handed, keep learning about the hidden mechanics of how your mind works, and above all else, keep trusting yourself. You have the receipts. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.